Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babbling Eyes video with myself and Sloth. It didn't take long, did it, Sloth? Füllkrug's injured. We have no striker again other than Antonio and Ings. Wasn't a surprise that this was going to happen, but it's happened. So now we've got to adjust it. Hopefully he's not going to be out too long. Apparently he's only going to be out for this upcoming game against Fulham at the weekend, and he should be back next week. But it could be longer. We don't know how long it's going to actually be until it comes out. So who the hell do we play as striker? Because we've got Antonio, we've got obviously Ings, we've got Kudus who can play there, we've got Paqueta who played false nine there, and obviously Jared Bowen as well, who's actually been playing striker for England over the international break and obviously played there a lot last season. So yeah, who are you kind of leaning towards to play in that position? Because there are a few different options as to how we can set up at the weekend against Fulham.
My natural instinct would be to go with Bowen and just put him there because obviously he did so well for us last season, covering that spot. And as you said, he led the line for England. And there was the stat that in the time he was on the pitch last night, he completed more take-ons than anyone else. So
yeah, I saw that.
It's already impressive, but I think I'm just a bit worried we'll play Antonio. And I don't mean that as a disrespect. I just think that we need to be looking to add a bit more pace and dynamism up top. And personally, I would go with either Bowen or Kudus.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously Antonio himself has been away. He actually scored for Jamaica. I think he scored a penalty over in, don't know who they were playing, but there are a few different options for what we can do with Füllkrug being injured. Obviously, Füllkrug hasn't really been the main leading striker so far. Antonio has been playing pretty much starting all of the Premier League games so far this season. So it's interesting to see how we do it because under Moyes, obviously, Bowen was playing striker, Kudus was out on the right, and Paqueta was out on the left. However, I don't think that Lopetegui will want to put Lucas Paqueta out on the left-hand side. And obviously, you've got Soler as well, who's coming in for the match as well on loan. So how would you structure it? Because Somerville can play out on the left, Kudus or Bowen can play out on the right. Paqueta, we've said, can play in the middle or as kind of that false nine. So if we are going to play Bowen striker, would you like to see Somerville come in for that spot and to occupy that left wing, or would you go with someone else?
I'd like to see Somerville start. I'm not too fussed because I think that Somerville can make an impact off the bench. So I think if we have like it's almost like a safety net. So whoever we put in that left wing position, then if Somerville starts, great. We've got pace down that left hand side. If we want to switch it up and say we've put Paqueta on that left side, it's a good alternative to have. So I'd like to see Somerville start, if not just to get minutes under his belt and keep the pace in the attack. But I don't really think that when you're looking at the attacking options we have, there is a massive drop off, and that's not something we've had for a long time. That is with the caveat of Danny Ings, who I just don't think suits the system whatsoever. And it's a tough one because we kind of spoke about Carlos Soler and what he brings, and he does have a surprising amount of sort of agility and pace. So I think he'll be an asset, and whether we choose to put him either side, which is kind of what happened quite a lot at PSG for him, that is an option as well. But we have seen the quotes from Kudus in the past where he says, he quite likes that central role, and he feels like he is very productive in that, either 9 or that 10 position. So it's nice to have options, but it's so typical of West Ham to have signed someone who, first of all, wasn't fully fit. Second of all, Achilles tendonitis is something that would have flagged on the medical. It's something that is documented as having as well. So it's disappointing that while I am a big fan of Füllkrug, that we didn't think that this would happen, or maybe we were just kind of thinking we'll cover it with the likes of Bowen, and that's fantastic. But it's probably our most urgent position, or it was one of them minus the centre backs. So it's very frustrating that we haven't got a natural striker to go in there.
I know Bowen, because obviously Bowen was playing there quite a lot last season when we had to, and he actually spoke in interviews last year about how he really enjoyed playing as that striker, and was still learning the position. I think we saw against England, even in that match, he was tending to drift into pockets, almost playing as that false nine. And I think Bowen and Kudus are pretty similar in the sense that they could both do that. Would you rather have? So I'm assuming you'd probably rather have Bowen as striker and Kudus out on the right, rather than Kudus as kind of that false nine and Bowen on the right, because we haven't actually seen Kudus in that false nine position before. Do you think that would kind of negate a lot of what Kudus can do if we were to put him centrally? Because as you say, we want to see Kudus centrally, but maybe not as the leading striker in that front three, and almost playing as a number 10 instead, because that's when you find pockets of space. That's when you can run off the striker. And then, we've said on the channel before, Bowen can play striker, but his best position's right wing. He's better at those kind of out to in runs from the right hand side. But again, so is Kudus. Kudus would be, I feel like, better right wing than he would be as the striker. Do you agree with that?
I think it's interesting to have this problem where I think with Kudus, he has the pace and the physicality to kind of thrive regardless of having someone play off him, or with Antonio creating the space, or as we saw Füllkrug doing the same thing. I think it's a case of Bowen offers such a threat on that right hand side with cutting in, and it's something that if you give Kudus the chance to naturally follow in the centre, I think he'll probably really thrive there. He's also going to be a lot more dynamic than Antonio, so he's going to be offering himself for passes as an outlet to run into space, and really give defenders nightmares in that middle area. So I think it's a good kind of dynamic to have. But do I think there's a massive issue in terms of what he offers in comparison to Bowen? Not really. I think I'd probably like to see Bowen stay on that right hand side, if not just to link up with Aaron Wan-Bissaka. And we've seen him that it's very early to assume that he wouldn't be able to do that with Kudus. So I'm not saying that. I just like what I've seen so far. And I think if you gave Kudus the chance to play in what is a more favourable position for him than out on the left, I think you'd see a lot more from him.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because also it will kind of stem from how Lopetegui wants to play the midfield three as well, because he could opt for, say, Alvarez and Guido Rodriguez, and then Paqueta as that midfield three, like we played against Man City. Or he might try and go a little bit more bold, like you said, either bringing in Soler into that midfield three in place of Alvarez or Guido, or even dropping Kudus into that kind of number 10 role and dropping Paqueta deep alongside Alvarez or Guido, and then that allows you to play a front three of Somerville, Kudus, and Somerville, Bowen, and Antonio striker. So there are quite a few different options for Lopetegui going into this Fulham game. And the injury to Füllkrug doesn't change the fact that we still have Antonio, and Antonio's been playing striker for a lot this season. I just think that he might use it as an opportunity to play Bowen striker and Kudus out on the right. That's my gut feeling of what he's going to do. Would I be disappointed with that? Probably not, if it means that Somerville's going to come in on the left-hand side, because as you said, we've only really seen Kudus this season out on the left-hand side, and I think it's limiting his impact on what he can bring. I think he's much better on that right-hand side if he is going to play on the wing. Is there maybe a way we can fit all these players in? Like we said, it's very difficult to do it. I'm glad I'm not the manager, but does Antonio deserve to start this game on Saturday against Fulham, or should we try someone like Bowen? Who do you think deserves that spot as the number 9 this Saturday?
I think, like I've said it a couple of times, but I think we need to move away from this notion that players deserve to start, especially if they're not scoring goals.
Yeah.
Antonio's been a fantastic servant for the club, and I think he is a great player, but we need to do what's best for West Ham. And I think that personally, either Bowen or Kudus would be far more effective up top than Antonio has been this season. So I think I would personally put Kudus up top, and I would like to see him start there. But I think that if you were to mix it up and take Antonio off, and Antonio starts, you've still got pace off the bench, and that for me is I think there are players who can make that impact, and we now have a Premier League quality bench as opposed to sort of the benches we've seen of old.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the main point is we'd probably both bring in Somerville for Füllkrug if he's coming out. It's just then who do you play in that striker position? I would actually play Bowen striker and Kudus on the right, because I think Kudus would be more effective at carrying the ball from those wide areas. I know he can play the false nine and be very good in those tight areas, but I think Bowen would be more likely to make the runs in behind the defense than say Kudus was. I haven't really seen he's more of a ball to feet player. He likes to come and collect the ball and take players on. We've seen Bowen can make the runs in behind like a kind of striker would do. So I'd probably stick with Bowen striker. I think, as you said, Antonio hasn't really performed so far this season, so we have to change it up. And Füllkrug, his performances haven't been great so far in the limited time we've seen him. He hasn't been, he's been okay. He's done all right. But Antonio has been the same. He hasn't stood out on that front line. And I think it's time we try and, someone like Somerville, he had a really good impact against Man City and, looked really lively in the cup game as well that we played against, I think it was Bournemouth a couple of weeks ago. So I'd like to see Somerville come in on the left, Bowen striker, Kudus on the right, and then the midfield three can either be Paqueta, Guido, Alvarez, or Paqueta, Guido, Soler, or even one of those combinations of four players. But what do you reckon? Can Bowen lead the line for us in the long term? I know you wanted to see Kudus there as well. Who would you? Okay, different question. Who would score more goals if they played 38 games as a striker for West Ham, Kudus or Bowen?
Oh, that's a good question. I think maybe Bowen, just because he's played it a bit more, but yeah. And he knows the English game a bit more as well. But I think Kudus is explosive, and he's more likely to get you braces. I think braces and hat tricks than I think Bowen is. As strange as that sounds, but I think he's more likely to be happy. Making those sort of lung busting runs, dropping deeper, and I'm not a big advocate of strikers dropping massively deep. Anyone who saw my tweets over the Euros will know just how frustrated I get with that. But the difference is that we have players who can do that and get back up the pitch with pace now, and I think Kudus would be really good in that system with Bowen and Somerville either side. So I'm happy with any variation of that three, to be honest. But I think, I do think that against Fulham, maybe with Diop or the centre back Bassi, I think it could be a good chance to put Kudus there and have a bit more of a physical edge against them.
Yeah, good point. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Lopetegui does. And as you say, is a pretty fluid front three. If you do play Somerville, Kudus, Bowen, it can be very interchangeable. And what I'd like the most is the transition threat we would have with that front three, because, Fulham at home, they're going to be expected they will dominate most of possession, I would think. And they're going to try and press us quite high. So there will be spaces there, similar to Crystal Palace on the break. And it would be interesting to see how that front three flows. But yeah, let us know down below in the comments. What do you think? Who's going to be playing striker against Fulham on Saturday? Who would you like to see play striker against Fulham on Saturday? Because Füllkrug's out. Hopefully he'll be back soon and he'll be scoring goals. And, we'll be sitting here thinking, what a signing. But yeah, right now he's got the injury, which picked up on international break, which is frustrating. But yeah, we do have other players that can come and play that position as well. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And Sloth, till the next one.
Come on, you irons.